do it.
Welcome in. I am not Tony the Bull BTC. I am the crypto bull god, and this is all in the charts. If you appreciate the content, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, drop me a comment. You got click the bell icon for all notifications to know when to go live each and every single weekday, and sometimes on a Sunday to catch those weekly closes. I am very happy to have with me today Tony the Bull BTC is in the house. The last time he was on this live stream was mid 2023. Welcome back, Tony.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure the last time. It's going to be even better this time.
I completely agree. It's always nice to get someone else's perspective on the markets. You guys do not have to listen to me blab like you do every day. You show up here each and every weekday listening to me talk about the markets. It's good to get somebody else's fresh perspective in terms of what they see in the markets. And so that's what we're going to be bringing you today. There are lots and lots of fun things that we're going to cover today. I'm going to turn it over to Tony. Before I do, my friend, I just wanted to give a cheers salute, my friend. It's
Cheers.
nice to give a virtual toast to you. Looking forward to the live stream. Very good. I have Angel's Envy. What you got going on there?
My wife got me a Four Roses barrel strength for Valentine's Day, so
very nice. I saw the photo. I saw the photo on.
Yeah.
I saw the photo on X.
Strong.
Very nice.
Good.
You know, before we kick things off here, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and before we actually get into the nitty gritty of all the technical analysis and whatnot, I wanted to give you an opportunity to just give a little bit of background about yourself and sort of the value you're bringing to the space with a lot of your content.
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind introduction. So, Tony the Bull Severino. I am an aspiring CMT candidate. I've passed all 3 exams. I've done everything else that I need to do. I'm kind of just waiting at this point to get my letters. At that point, I'll be able to give, a lot more clear advice. It was really important to me when I first got into this stuff that I was speaking from a place of authority and knowledge and not just sort of speculating. I made some not so great calls towards the end of 2021. It made me really kind of go back and hit the books and learn the ins and outs of everything so that I could be better. I never wanted to settle and just be satisfied with, the same old way of thinking and doing things. So, yeah, I jumped into that program. Bitcoin trader at heart, but I do a little bit of altcoins. I've had a lot of luck lately with a couple, 10Xs with Solana, Fetch, and always hunting for the next one. So I'm also the author of the CoinCharts VIP newsletter. It's a weekly market insights newsletter focused around crypto, but also weaves in intermarket analysis, Elliott wave theory, and some other unorthodox stuff. I like to, teach people things, so there's always a little bit of education in there. But it's a great way to stay up on what's coming in crypto. I try to give the good, the bad, the ugly, and then anybody who subscribes gets access to my custom technical indicators, which we can talk about a little bit later.
Do you have the newsletter handy? Not to put you on the spot, do you have it up handy that you can quick kind of run through it, just to give the audience just a flavor of kind of what you hit on? Because one of the things I was telling you, and I've routinely actually tweeted out to you and tagged you in posts on X's, I read your newsletter frequently, and I use those custom indicators that you created, and I don't want to steal your thunder. That Raging Bull, I use that Raging Bull quite frequently for trades. So I find a lot of value in your content.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, man. Yeah, and I'll give it a quick share.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, the Raging Bull is sort of my prize AI indicator that I created, and it's based on relative strength actually, and we're going to go over that a little bit later. But essentially, it calls attention to when any sort of cryptocurrency or any asset for that matter is exhibiting like particular relative strength to the market. And if you combine that with other tools, it can really help you spot breakouts, and then you get to ride sustained strength. And it's also a situation where when it turns off, to get out of a trade, so it works as a trading system. To go over my newsletter a little bit, it's I try to break it up into Bitcoin, where Bitcoin's sort of the market mover. Give people sort of an overarching perspective of what that might do, since Bitcoin isn't going to do well, altcoins aren't going to do that well. We'll go over some of these things in today's video that I sort of covered.
Yep.
Then, I dig in more into altcoins. I may feature the total cryptocurrency market cap chart. I may feature Bitcoin dominance, individual altcoins, but there's always some sort of altcoin spin. I try to give informative looks at things, how the ETF is sort of potentially impacting Bitcoin cycles, tie it into the SPX, the S&P 500, and sort of how these things align with Bitcoin. And again, go into macro. This is a gold chart, again, talking about how the Bitcoin ETFs seem to be eating up gold. And, once it gets through here, we should see like a huge move in gold, the DXY, dollar currency index. And then I like to, as someone who spends a lot of time practicing Elliott wave theory, always try to include some additional wave counts on whatever I'm looking at in the world of crypto, this being Ethereum, XRP. And sort of what I'm getting at here is, these wave counts are really kind of showing me that it's like the end of the cycles are coming. So, but yeah, any VIP subscribers get access to my trading indicators. I even have a founding members program where people can get access to a premium Telegram channel where I give additional advice, help people with their portfolios, get to know them and help them structure things better in their finances.
A couple things before we pop off the newsletter, just real quick, just for my audience. I have Tony on here because I really value his content. Just a couple things real quick on the newsletter. The reason I personally find value in it is because Tony does a really good job of providing value-added views I don't think you're going to find from a lot of other technicians. Also, the other value that I find, and I take pride in this myself as being a teacher, is the value in a teacher is being able to coherently explain things in a digestible manner, right? You could be the most intelligent person in the world, but if you can't explain things in layman's terms to your audience in a way that it resonates with them, that they understand it, it's meaningless, right? So I find that you do a really good job of articulating things. And then obviously once you have, it's official, once you have those credentials behind your name, that obviously adds so much more, credibility to what you're putting out there. So cheers, man. You've done a great job, the newsletter.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All right. So speaking of strength in the market, since the last time you were on the live stream in July of 2023, we were at a time period where that first quarter in particular for Bitcoin provided a lot of excitement. There was then a lot of stability that was attempting to be created within price. Of course, we saw an explosive move that occurred going into the fourth quarter of last year, which has continued into this year. So let's get into where we're at in terms of just the relative strength of Bitcoin.
Yeah, so this is really something truly exciting because, any indicator that gives you a really good visual look at things without understanding the indicator yourself is helpful. So the relative strength index, it's considered overbought over a reading of 70. Now, this is a really confusing thing for crypto investors, traders, because the term overbought makes it sound like, well, that's it. It's overbought, the same way oversold you would expect to bounce. Well, in crypto, things can remain overbought for a very long time. And when they become overbought, it tends to be the most significant moves. So now you can really see anytime here Bitcoin is over 70 on the relative strength index, we get these like absolutely fantastic parabolic moves. And, we are at a reading of 68.32. So we are, less than 2 away from confirming over 70, which has always, again, triggered this incredible strength in Bitcoin. So, something big is on the horizon, and we're already up a couple 100% from the bottom, but we really haven't seen anything yet. And, not to say that we couldn't, do something like this over here or over here where we're, correcting and going back down. But look, we're this close to 70. Let's be positive here and look forward to what could potentially be a very abrupt and surprising bullish impulse.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'd hit on here is this is a monthly time frame. So one of the things I routinely convey on this channel, and I want to see if you agree with this, is on the higher time frames, if you're reading something that's very bullish or very bearish, there's a lot more so long as there's enough price data, there's a lot more credibility behind what it is that you're looking at on the higher time frames versus the lower time frames. So this is a lot more statistically significant, if I want to use some fancy actuary words. It's more statistically significant in terms of what we could potentially expect versus looking at a 12-hour time frame.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, that's a mistake that a lot of people make as well. They're looking at things like the daily and trying to understand, has Bitcoin topped? And it probably hasn't, unless it's, we'll go over this more later, but unless it's up here in the RSI, it's very unusual for Bitcoin to put any sort of significant cycle top in. So again, the fact that people are looking for it down here really doesn't make sense. But people don't understand that. That's a very good point you made, and something that everybody should sort of pay in mind to is that the higher the time frame, the more dominant the signal.
And something else to point out that's very interesting on this chart that maybe we can quick hit on. The impulsive structures that are formed on this chart, you can see they're all at prior all-time highs, except for one spot on that chart. $69,000 that was hit in late 2021. Look at that RSI. That's way down there. Yeah, because it seems that may have been part of a corrective structure.
Absolutely, and that's one thing you could potentially look for is the whole bearish divergence. You don't want to trust those until after, really, but I mean, this is a pretty significant bearish divergence here. So that's something to be mindful of. We could see something like that again, and although this to me was the real top, because this is when strength sort of tapped out. The price still went up here, and we could see something similar. This was somewhat similar. You didn't get the divergence, but you at least got two equal highs on the RSI. We could even get something like that and have two thrusts. That will tie into later when we're talking about expect the unexpected.
Yeah, and to expect the unexpected, we are going to hit on that. And the S&P, look at where that RSI is at right now. I mean, we're closing out the month in just over a week. Of course, we're closing out the month in a week from now. This, last year was supposed to be the year where everything was going to fall apart and plummet, and we're going to have this massive recession. And I don't mean to joke at that, because I think something a deep correction is around the corner. We just aren't there yet. But look at that RSI on the S&P, almost getting above 70 as well there.
Yeah, and the reason why I call this out is for a couple different reasons. Is people like to think of Bitcoin as something that ebbs and flows only with the halving cycle, and granted, a lot of these bullish RSI impulses and moving above 70 have a very close proximity to the Bitcoin halving, which I'll show in a moment.
Yep.
But this really demonstrates that the halving wouldn't cause the S&P 500 to rally like this. This is actually a couple of years on end. This is good, this even one as well, 2-year rally. This isn't as strong once it got in here, but neither was it for Bitcoin. So my observations from this are essentially Bitcoin moves above 70 on the RSI about 3 to 5 months ahead of the S&P 500, but it's a leading indicator for the stock market. Bitcoin, it's more sensitive to global liquidity, and therefore we see it pump and start to do well in a more significant way than the stock market ever does. What's a little unusual now, as you can actually see, is they're quite close in terms of readings now. The S&P 500 is at 66.6 and Bitcoin's at 68. I still think this is going to be a situation where Bitcoin makes it above 70 before the stock market. But, again, the S&P 500 is going to follow right behind. And, if you're looking at the Bitcoin halving, I'm going to type it wrong 200 times. These have great close proximity to, when the S&P 500 starts to go into overdrive, which it really shouldn't. And then if you even look here, April would be the next one. So if anything, it could be sort of going above 70 right at the next halving. So yeah, again, I just don't think the halving has this impact on Bitcoin that everybody likes to think it does. It's okay if people believe that. It's a good thing to believe in. It does seem to have correlation, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's causation. So just something to be mindful of. And the reason why I stress this is and I do expect this to be a little bit shorter of a bullish impulse, and one that people were just really unprepared for. You made a great point. People got so bearish over the last year or two because of the macro conditions. I don't think they're totally wrong to be so, but you got to do what the market is telling you, and the market is going up, and you have a responsibility to pay attention to that. You can't just stay sidelined forever, and a lot of people have, and that means they're going to get FOMO and jump in, from here on up. And I think that's the key to driving such higher prices in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and it's interesting, that you bring that up, because a couple things hit me, and I don't think I brought this up to you prior, but if you go back and you listen to the live stream when you had come on back in July, we had talked about how once price, and you and I actually agreed on a dollar point when there would be a lot of retail interest would start to kick up, was around this psychological $50,000 area. And it's crazy to think that back in July, if you go back and listen to that live stream, there were still calls at that point for $5,000 to $10,000 Bitcoin. There were calls coming into 2023 for 10 to 15. The calls were being raised, but and we're at this point, and my sense, and I know we're going to get into topping signals later, but one of the items that I definitely want to use as one of the handful of topping signals I'm going to come up with is reading something to read the emotional sentiment of the retail investor when there's true FOMO in the market. Everyone right now, to me, feels like there's a true sense of disbelief from the bears. I mean, they've been in disbelief since last year. And even the bulls, I find that there's always a narrative that the bulls need to come up with to make sense of the price action and why price is front-running the halving, when in reality, we've had the charts in front of us the entire time leading us in the direction of certain probabilities. And again, I'm in the camp that news follows the charts and not the other way around. There's this human emotion element where people need to tie a narrative to the price action they're seeing, when the price data itself is telling you all you need to know.
That's right. That's right. That's that great quote from Templeton there, is the show me the charts and I'll tell you the news.
Yep.
And you can sometimes anticipate. I mean, I think it was the best example of that so far was the Bitcoin ETF approvals. It was like you could tell in the chart that that was coming, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. The first time I actually really saw that happen, where the chart told us the news.
Yep. Now, I know the last time that you were on the live stream getting into some of this Bollinger Band talk, I know that the last time that I had you on the live stream, we kind of assessed the Bollinger Bands. I believe we were right on the midline of the Bollinger Bands. So it's going to be very interesting to take a look at where we are at currently and what you're deciphering from that.
Great memory, because so looking at it, you said July. We were literally right, hanging around the midline. So yeah, that's a great observation, and so that's a great way to kind of explain this tool down here. So the Bollinger Bands, created by John Bollinger in the 1980s. It's a volatility measuring tool, but it's also a breakout trade style system, trend following system. And basically, anytime you get a significant close above the upper Bollinger Band, you usually get the sustained trend, and it does what it's called walking the upper band. And you can kind of tell this behavior is about to begin anytime this percentage B indicator rises above 1. And what this is telling
Tony,
us...
Can you, sorry to interrupt you, can you do one thing for me? It'll be good for a visual for the audience. Just double click on the price chart, get off the price indicators for a moment, just so they can, because it shows up better. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good, man. Thank you. I want to make it as clear for everybody as you can. So to explain that again with more visibility, but you get this breakout above the upper Bollinger Band, and then it walks the bands. You had that sort of behavior here, and it walked the bands all the way up. Right here, walked the bands. Well, we got the breakout, and this month was indecision, but now hopefully we're starting to walk the bands, and this tends to happen after you get what's called a squeeze, And the squeeze happens when the Bollinger Bands narrow to the tightest level within a 6-month period. These are actually, several year-long periods. And, you know, uh, anytime after this sort of tightening and narrowing, you get a release of energy and it begins to expand. And what this tells us is volatility is going to be picking up. And that's the whole point of why I wanted to call this out is, everybody's been freaking out lately because of this irrational price action where like one day we're at 52K and then the next day we're back at 49 and then back at 52. This is normal now. This is the new normal. We went through the sideways slow phase all around here.
Yep.
We're at the upper Bollinger Bands. These things are expanding. It's time for volatility, guys. Like, if you're getting shaken out now, you have no idea what you're up against as these really start to expand.
If volatility is high, it's time to buy. I heard that line recently, and that sort of resonated with what you're showing here. The other takeaway, again, monthly view, a lot of credibility here, a lot of price data on Bitcoin. I'm not seeing any monthly candlesticks, and spot check me on this if I'm correct, or maybe I'm misinterpreting the chart, but I'm not seeing any walking of the bands upwards where there was a fake out. Again, limited in price data in terms of the number of occurrences, but based on the number of occurrences, we're on a monthly chart, we're sort of walking up the Bollinger Band. I don't see any fake outs here.
No, that's a great point. In fact, this is probably our best example of what, would have been some, but the truth is it actually stopped and never made it outside the upper Bollinger Band. So, it really proved its value as a breakout style trend following system. It didn't give us the breakout. It said, don't enter here if you haven't already. There was other opportunities. It also told us here, very interestingly, that this downtrend was no longer going to continue. Otherwise, this would have been a breakout below this and told us to sell even more, and we would have got continuation. So, yeah, you can get a lot of signals from where it stops. Another really interesting one is actually this one. So after you get this sort of walking the bands behavior, if your second top fails to break out of the upper Bollinger Band, it tells you that it's not continuation and that this is an M-type topping pattern. So things that I learned after the fact. But, as long as you learn them, that's the most important part.
Absolutely. So the current monthly candlestick, before we get into some of these other price indicators that I know you want to cover, this current monthly candlestick, where, based on this chart, do you want to see price close by next week when we close out the month?
Great point. So really, I like to keep my labels on here for that exact reason, because I never, looking as closely as I should be, but $46,550-ish. And this is, I'm going to take the opportunity. This wasn't something I was planning on going over, but I actually have the Bollinger Band set on a monthly a couple different ways. So I'm going to switch it to this one. And now the way the Bollinger Bands work too is you can actually set these up on different time frames.
Yep.
So right here, excuse me. Right here, time frame is 1 month. And what I can do in that case is I can change this to the daily. And the reason why I'm calling this out is this was probably our most important buy area right here. We had the breakout of the upper monthly Bollinger Band. Price came back down. We got this sort of close back under it. And then, when this happened was when I took a lot of positions because I had hoped, yes, the retest is going to hold. And then, again, looking at this sort of lower time frame, but using a monthly Bollinger Band, we can see that this basis line, which is a 20 period simple moving average, it's starting to turn up. And, if we go back, and I'll go back to the monthly, if we look at this sort of historically on when it starts to turn up, your bottom is in basically. And now your uptrend is beginning. The basis line is literally telling us that right now. So
you can see to your point, it's a very good point that you're making here. You can see, and I'm using you can't see this, Tony, but I'm using my mouse that the audience can see. We're turning up right here in 2016 going into 2017. We're turning up in late 2020 going into 2021, and we're starting to turn up in early 2024. Very, very, very good point.
Definitely, yeah. And so getting into these other sort of related indicators, the percentage B is another like related tool, and it just really tells us at this point, we're above the upper Bollinger Band. It makes it clear.
Yep.
And, from here you can sort of see the longer it sort of hovers and walks these upper bands, the better. But I'm actually going to X that out, and so I can give you a closer look at Bollinger Bandwidth. So this is another related side indicator that basically just measures how wide this is. You can see here it got pretty narrow here. What I had been watching as we approached our bottom was that we were actually as low as some of our past impulses. And as you can see, things sort of went nuts here, things sort of went nuts here. But that's not the point of actually showing you this. The point of showing you this is I have discovered that there is some sort of a downtrend line over here where, in my opinion, volatility is actually going to break out from maybe, a decade-long downtrend of volatility. This is the strongest move we've ever seen volatility-wise, and everything else that came after was lower and lower and more subdued. I think that there's a real opportunity for this to even surpass this stop over here in terms of volatility. So again, the reason for this is I know a lot of people have been really panicked over the price action. Any large daily type correction, immediately they're ready to throw in the towel. Oh, we're going back to 40K, back to 30Ks, 20Ks. It's not happening. It's daily volatility, and if volatility is going to get this strong on a monthly level, the daily, just get it out of your head. This is where the term hold came from, because a lot of people aren't going to have the stomach for all these shakeouts all the way up.
Yep.
Imagine, so yeah, just be mindful of that. This is telling us that volatility is going to do something substantial, and that's something to pay attention to.
Couple quick thoughts, and I want you to stick right on that because I just had an observation that I was hoping you could look at and see what your thought is. But you just hit on something really, really important that I just hit on yesterday on my live stream, which is, guys, and I was saying this yesterday because there was a little bit of red in the market. Guys, you can't expect to be in a space where there is, depending how you're positioned and how you're invested and doing your due diligence and remaining patient with your investments, you have the opportunity to truly create some financial independence for yourself, or some degree of high rate of appreciation in the portfolio you're in. You can't expect to be in what I consider to be the best space for that potential, where there's as much upside potential without the downside volatility and risk. You can't have it one way absent of the other, right? You can't get all that upside potential without the downside volatility and risk. It's impossible. It's called beta. That's
right. And
go ahead.
Sorry. Just one point that I think is so important too is people forget that, Bitcoin is this volatile. When you go and you're starting to buy, small cap altcoins, and then you're wondering why it's going up 20, 40, 50% in a day, then back down, 27%. That's why it's even higher beta than everything else. So, people just really need to understand what it is they're investing in. And if you can't, handle the volatility of Bitcoin, you don't want to be in altcoins then, So yeah, just wanted to call attention to that.
Yeah, it's easy to say you think Fetch AI is going well over $1, and perhaps if you did not, a little plug for Tony, if you didn't have the Raging Bull indicator, you may have been selling at 30 or 60 cents, and you would have missed the run up to $1 plus. So I mean, you're going to get a lot of volatility on the way up and also on the way down. But another point I wanted to hit on here, and I want to get your quick thoughts because this just kind of stuck out to me. You can actually draw a descending resistance from where you have it starting in 2014 down to the peak in 2018. So if you draw the peak, if you draw a resistance, from that point down to 18, keep drawing it, keep going down. You can see that once we broke that resistance, look at when the volatility broke up past that, that's when we saw the astronomical rise. I'm curious if you do the same thing, if you draw it from the peak of 18 to the peak of 21, have we broken that downward resistance yet? And so we haven't. And so the question I'm pondering just looking at this, and again, we haven't looked at this together prior to now, is when we truly break out above that blue line, should we, which I would expect we would, is that really when things are going to really start to get parabolic in the market?
That's a great point. In my opinion, when you get these like multiple trend line breaks like this, is when you start to see fireworks. So yeah, it could get through this one, this lower black one, and then almost immediately get through this one, and Bitcoin's going to sing, and we're going to see an absolutely monster monthly candle. So yeah, I mean, and that's exactly why I wanted to call out this, and I'm glad you actually noticed these other ones as well. And this one's very fascinating to me, that volatility actually came down and bottomed as if it's retesting the breakout.
See that.
That's an interesting. I didn't notice that, so I'm glad you called that out.
Now, I think there were a few other price indicators that you wanted to get into, some of which I am less familiar with, including the Fisher transformation.
Yeah, so this was tying into sort of our topping signals. Let me go into that then. This is we're at the stage now where yes, we have a lot more upside, but it is time to start to think about what your strategy is to get out. And you made a really great point earlier on in the show about sentiment, and things like soft indicators and stuff like that are actually probably going to be more important to me than any of these technical indicators in terms of a top. When you see like the laser eyes and you see people being like, oh, Bitcoin's going to $1 million a coin, and like, everybody's so sure of that. It's a new paradigm.
Family and friends reaching out.
Yeah.
Seriously, yeah.
Exactly. So that's a great, when you get all your retail buddies starting to text you, and it's like, yeah, all right, those are the signs. So, but there are technical signals that you can look for. I put a couple on here. One is the Keltner channel. And, this is very similar to the Bollinger Bands. Channel-based systems are really tell you a lot about price action. Especially when they go above the upper boundary of any of the channels. So just like the Bollinger Bands, you get this breakout, and then it sort of walks the upper channel. But the significance here is when you get a significant close, back into the Keltner channels, like here, and then again here, that's your top. It tells you that the trend has been interrupted and it's over. And then even here, we did not get the full close outside of it. If you really look closely, it's literally right at the line here. So again, that's the Keltner channel. This other one is the Fisher transform, and I really like this one for cyclical tools, because what this does, this is a statistical tool actually. It normalizes price action through a Gaussian distribution, which is very complex terminology.
And you're taking me back to college, right? You're taking me back to my actuarial exams. What the hell's going on right now? That shit is done. No, Tony, that shit's done with. I still have nightmares about those freaking exams. No more.
Trust me, man. Me too. And it's fresh for me because I just did that CMT course. This was the hardest, the most brutal stuff to go over. But as you can see, it does a really phenomenal job about telling us where the top is. And, again, just like what you pointed out on the RSI later, even though price went higher, we got no confirmation of a new trend here, and it's lower. But, part of what I wanted to show this for too, wasn't just the topping, the strength as a topping indicator, but this is something I used to find the bottom in Bitcoin. Check out this cyclical perfection here. I mean, I was like literally just waiting for this to flip up to tell me, hey dude, the bottom's in. So this is right dead smack in the middle of this.
That is really crazy. And maybe this is something we're going to revisit, because I know, Tony, you and I have spoken about you coming back on here and dedicating a live stream just to cycle analysis, because I know I find it very interesting. I think the audience would find it very interesting. You clearly have a passion for it. This is just really, really, it's almost mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, like it just it's like why does it happen? But it happens, and this tool does a really great job of showing you when it's going to happen. And now if we're considering these sort of cycles, this is a right translated cycle. It's a little bit to the right of the the peak crest of the cycle. I'm of the mindset we're actually going to see a left translated cycle here, so somewhere over here more. But again, you never know. It could not do what I think it's going to do and do something completely else. But at least this gives you some sense of what where you are in a cycle and where the price extremes are. So this helps you measure the price extremes. It's based on a standard deviation. Any readings above the standard deviations, are a high level of upward price action. And so you can even draw some lines across them and give you some thresholds as to when you think things will break out. So like, let's just say we drew it here. Anything above this 2+2 standard deviation tends to give us a bull run. And here we are, we're sort of in that phase. So yeah, very helpful tool there. And then, another topping signal tool I wanted to point out, and something I'm watching closely is the LMACD, which is just the log version of the MACD, and I'm looking for bearish crossovers above a reading of 0.25 on the signal line. And as you can see, this did a really good job so far historically of telling us when the hell to get out. So, it's not perfect. You missed a little bit here, a little bit here, but in the grand scheme of what a bear market looks like in 80% drawdowns, hey, I'll miss 5%, 5 to 10% from the top, no problem. And then one last thing I sort of noticed here is we potentially have some sort of a downtrend line brewing, which, if it sort of stays, we could potentially see a top here slightly below my target of 0.25. So even though I've established this as the boundary that I really want to watch for, I would consider a potential top just below it, because of this factor. You never know.
And I mean, this and something these are really some really value-added views here. I'm going to go back and rewatch this and listen to your analysis again, in particular to the prior charts. And I know these are things you've hit on in your newsletter before, and I'm not sure, maybe some of these things you've hit on X before, but I think one of the things I've tried to my best to convey to my audience is it's so difficult to time a top, right? One of the things we can certainly take away from the prior live stream that we did together was to expect the unexpected. And so, you and I both, if we're calling a spade and recognizing that no one has perfect calls, we were both thrown off by that irregular correction. It threw both of us a curveball. So the important question is, what can you learn from that? And what are I preach keeping it stupid simple. What are the handful of indicators you're going to look at to convince you with not certainty, but with probabilities that more than likely, if we haven't topped, we're very close to it, that we've topped, right? And that's the time when you want to start scaling out of your investments. Would you not agree?
Absolutely.
Oh, I know what this is.
Yeah, so just one last tool I sort of wanted to call attention to was one of my custom tools was the Bitcoin Bullseye.
Yep.
And it was designed to, just like you just said, start to scale in or out of positions. Anytime you see this sort of thing fire here, it's based on a couple different moving averages and when they cross over. And it did a really good job of giving us tops, a little bit behind on this particular bottom, but that's okay. For that reason, I wanted to call it a tool that helps you scale in and out of things. So when you see this fire in the future, get out. It's over.
Yeah, so I didn't tell you this, and intentionally I did not tell you this ahead of the live stream, but this is one of the 5 indicators that I plan on using to tell me if the market has most likely topped. So for my audience, I'm just letting you know right now. Now, this is a patented indicator that Tony has created, so I can't give you access to that. You have to get access through his services, but this is one of the 5 indicators I'm going to be using.
Great. I'm so glad that you continue to find value in my stuff. And yeah, this is one of the ones that I really want everybody to get access to, because buying crypto and doing well, I don't want to say it's easy, but certainly easier than getting out at the top. And
Yep.
so this to me is just the most important thing, because your gains don't matter if you don't keep them. So yeah, really, just know when to sell and hopefully you use the tool.
Correct. And I think the other thing is, I think what's really nice about your approach, and your approach is going to be similar to mine. I'm going to get a video out there on the 5 indicators I'm using. You can't rely on one indicator. Let me see if you agree with this. You can't rely on one chart or one indicator. I know that I've gotten questions on the pi cycle, and there's been a lot of value in looking at the daily pi cycle. I'm not going to disagree with that. I don't want to have a spoiler alert here. It might be one of the 5, but you can't expect for any one indicator or any one chart to tell you with certainty what is going to happen. There literally is no certainty in any of these charts. So my idea, and I think this sounds like it's similar for yourself, is if you can get a handful of indicators, charts, whatever the case is, and they're all around the same time in relative fashion, they're all firing, now you have more credibility behind the idea that you should start selling if all 5 of them are firing versus just one. Thoughts?
100%. That's the right way to do it. Yeah, you can't rely on any one particular thing. So starting in advance, sort of like what you and I are doing, finding things you're comfortable with that have historically called tops.
Yep.
That's what you want to look for. But just take our message where we're even saying don't necessarily trust any one thing. Look for confluence across a few different signals. And again, to reiterate, this signal is going to be a lot stronger if people have laser eye profiles and and getting the text messages from retail buddies.
Super cycle, Bitcoin 500,000.
Exactly. So, consider really almost everything. Pay attention to everything that's going on around you in the market. Another simple topping indicator that always, when you're checking your portfolio and you're like, oh my God, I'm showing my all my loved ones how rich I am. Yeah, probably top.
That may have happened once or twice last 2 years
It's
ago.
happened to us all, right?
That may have happened.
Happened to the best of us. So don't feel bad if you're watching this and it feels like we're calling you out. We've done it too.
Yes, emotion is a money killer. As I always say, emotion is a money killer. You have to stay grounded and logical. And speaking of emotions, I know my audience gets quite emotional, as most people do in crypto, surrounding their altcoins. They want to have a sense of when are we going to see a true alt season? And so kind of tying into that, and I want to kind of go back in time to July and see if anything has changed from your perspective, and it'll tie into altcoins too. Maybe you can share your relative expectations on altcoins. We had a conversation in the July live stream of last year surrounding Ethereum, and one of the things I had asked you during that live stream was, do you think that at any point between now and our blow off top, do you think Ethereum will supersede Bitcoin's market cap? Now at that time, I had indicated to you that I did think that Ethereum would temporarily flip Bitcoin for part of a day, maybe a whole day. It wouldn't last, but I did think that. For me, nothing has changed, and I'll tell you why real quick, and I want to get your thoughts. Nothing has changed for me because as boring as Ethereum has been and everyone's jumped on the Solana bandwagon, that's the emotional narrative. Nothing, and you actually pulled up the chart, nothing on the ETH BTC chart has changed for me from a technical perspective to make me think that we could not potentially flip Bitcoin's market cap temporarily. Thoughts?
It's a great point, and I think so. From a technical standpoint, I give it more. However, I'm still sort of against it, in my opinion, just simply because I do think Ethereum has more competition nowadays than it ever did before. It's looking a little bit like a dinosaur. I know, just like you said, the narratives is about to flip, in favor of Ethereum in a huge way, in my opinion. At least that's what the chart's telling me. Yeah. Like if you look at the call ETH chart, it's very clear ETH is going to outperform Solana for the foreseeable future. And this honestly very much tells me it's going to outperform Bitcoin as well. I just think just like you said, the narratives, I think by the time it gets close, something will happen, and Ethereum's fees will be too high or whatever it may be, but something
Right.
will sort of disrupt that narrative before it totally gets there. But hey, again, I'm open to being wrong. I think there's tons of value in people having differing opinions,
Yep.
and I'm even playing this as I'm ready to be wrong. I'm going to own Ethereum in a large amount so that if I'm wrong, good. I'm still going to make money. You want to be diversified mostly into Bitcoin and Ethereum beyond anything else. I know people are always looking for the most astronomical gains, but again, that goes back to the whole beta thing, and you're dealing with a lot more volatility, a lot more
Yep.
risk. So the way to get around that is really sticking with the two market drivers, and that's Bitcoin and Ethereum. So, you know, even if I'm ultimately wrong, you can't go wrong by owning Ethereum and at least having some in your portfolio.
Yeah, I love coming to the table and having differing views when it comes from a standpoint or viewpoint of being educated, right? You're a really educated individual. I'm really educated. And so it's great that we can kind of come together and say, hey, man, I don't see that, but I think it's certainly possible. And if I'm wrong, hey, I'm positioned anyway. I'd love to be wrong. I think there's so much value in, we see a lot, especially with maximalists, which I can't stand, but you see a lot of fighting between different communities and things. And I never get that. I never understood that. I can't stand the tribalism. I really appreciate when people can just have an open forum and discussion and have differing viewpoints respectively. So really appreciate that. Something real quick before we get off this subject is just any general thoughts that you want to share on where altcoins are positioned right now and maybe how that ties into Ethereum, because it's something I routinely cover on my live stream.
Yeah. So earlier in the show, I sort of said Bitcoin drives the market, especially when I was referencing my newsletter. And while Bitcoin drives the market, Ethereum drives the altcoin market more than anything else. So the reason why we haven't seen this true altcoin season yet, we've seen some altcoins outperform and be market leaders, and certain sectors do well, but it's not until Ethereum really starts to do well where everything, like every sort of individual sector, DeFi, GameFi, everything will start ripping once Ethereum is going to be the sort of the wave that lifts all the other boats along the tide. So
Yep.
that's what I'm waiting for. I do think an Ethereum ETF will ultimately be approved. Maybe that's to sell the news and helps gives us some sort of a top around altcoin season. I don't know, just really kind of speculating there. But ultimately, when Ethereum starts moving, it is starting. That's when you're going to see altcoins do really well. And based on everything else I'm seeing in the altcoin market, I really do think a very strong surprise altcoin season is going to materialize within the next several months. And the sentiment is still such in the gutter around altcoins, especially with retail isn't buying, and I don't even really think the institutions are buying that much unless it's like a Chainlink, Solana, or select few. So when it begins, it's just going to be extreme and it's going to be fast. So you have the responsibility. Do you want to get in now, or do you want to wait until it starts moving and you chase things? That's on you. It's up to you. You're going to probably make money either way, as long as you're not at the very end. But it's coming, and you don't want to miss it. You really think if you pay attention to that, like say Dogecoin chart from the last cycle, it was only crazy bullish for a couple months there, but
Yep.
you would become a millionaire or a billionaire in those few months. So just again, pay close attention, try to find some front runners, clear market leaders, and get diversified too. If you're not in anything, you're not gonna win. But at the same time, don't diversify too much. That's always a mistake I see a lot of people make. Do it based on your capital. And just be smart about it. And again, finally, is stick with predominantly Bitcoin and Ethereum. Only have your sort of moon bags and altcoins. And when you do that, only allocate what you can afford to lose, because you can't lose it melts.
A rising tide lifts all boats, and I think people, man, there was so much in there that you said that was really good. A rising tide lifts all boats. I think something that people routinely forget is the charts, which the reason my live stream is called All in the Charts. I really think everything really is all in the charts. Part of what's in the charts, it's human emotion, it's disparity, it's anger, it's depression, it's FOMO, it's exuberance. All that stuff is in the charts, and I think people I think have short-term memories. They think that history, the saying, history doesn't repeat, it often rhymes. For some reason, and I've heard these narratives being spewed around, they really don't think that something like a Dogecoin can go. I think Dogecoin has a strong potential to be over $1. It's been sitting at 9 cents forever. Okay, if you need a narrative that Elon Musk needs to tweet about it, whatever the case is, but when I look at that chart, and again, this is something I routinely hit on the channel, you get, in most of your altcoins, you have an extended period of correction and consolidation, and then a very short period of upwards expansion. So it takes the patient person to really be able to effectively evaluate the price data. And the easiest but hardest thing to do at the same time right now, just sit on your hands and wait for things to get frothy, and then to know how to dollar cost average out of your position. Because you need to, I think it sounds like you and I both learned the hard way back in 21, unless if you're selling your positions, you're not realizing any of that gain. You can look at it on paper and it looks nice, but unless if you're actually selling it, you're not making any gains.
Right. And that's really what it's all about. It's the capital you keep, not the capital you make.
Exactly. Do you know, before we get to questions here, I just wanted to open up the questions for a few minutes, and I know you got to run soon, but was the latest chatter that the projected potential approval for the Ethereum ETF, is it like April, May? Is that what people are talking about?
Yeah, May, I think I heard, was the latest. And yeah, I mean, I want to say that's very close around when you and I were sort of planning for there to be some sort of a peak. So who knows? Maybe it aligns with what we were thinking.
Right, which is actually what I was going to hit on. Is it'd be interesting if everything sort of lines up around that Mayish time frame. You got the halving going on. You got an ETF approval. There is FOMO in the market, thinking that we're in a super cycle. You'll see news clippings about Bitcoin to $250,000 plus. Tim Draper's coming out with his fifth different year for Bitcoin to hit $250,000. And that's when you know things are getting super frothy, which we didn't hit on this, and I'll save most of this for the next time we get together. But yeah, my predominant view is still that Bitcoin is going to top within the first half, roughly no later than July of this year. I have been doing quite a bit of research on liquidity cycles, interest rate cycles, and so I definitely see the argument this could extend into late 24, early 25. Very open to that. And that's why, and I'm glad we ended the discussion points with topping signals, that's why it's very important to know how you're going to read the market to tell you, hey, things are more than likely topping out, because you or I do not know. You or I do not know. We're taking educated guesses when the market will top. So have your topping signals prepared.
That's right. Great message.
All right, let's get into the questions here. Let's see who we got. Any questions for Tony while I have him on the live stream, guys? DT says he has your book. Excellent content in an easy to understand format. Are you planning any more?
I am actually, yeah. I want to create a kind of a building blocks of how to become a technical analyst or trader, and start at the basics from how to know what an uptrend or a downtrend is, how to know when things are moving sideways, some light Elliott wave theory, chart patterns, candlestick patterns, but sort of like a mini reference guide to all things sort of crypto trading. And it would be created from the perspective of how to use it in crypto. So earlier on, for example, I mentioned people very much look at the RSI and think, oh, it's overbought or oversold. You know, oh, I should do something, I should sell or I should buy. And realistically, those signals stay elevated a lot longer than you would think. So, you know, that's not entirely crypto specific. It's any sort of like really strong trending asset, but certainly happens more in a speculative asset class like crypto. So, yeah, I want to create something else. And thank you so much for saying that about the book. I'm really thrilled to have released something and want to contribute more that is of value to people.
Very nice. Yeah, DT's one of the longtime supporters of the channel, so good to hear that he has your book. Um, so Track, who's also a frequent of the live stream, question for you, Tony. So you went over a few indicators there. Do you have a number one indicator, one that sort of sticks out to you that you just, it's like your bread and butter for topping signals?
For topping signals, all right, that changes it a little bit. So for topping signal, I probably would go Fisher transform. That's really in the monthly time frame. Any sort of crossovers, tends to have a lot of cyclical significance. It will help you call out like mid-cycle tops, cycle bottoms, cycle tops. So definitely pay attention to that one. But I also just I can't say it enough. My favorite tool is truly the Bollinger Bands. I love the
I know
breakout
you
signal.
love Bollinger Bands, yeah.
Yeah, and knowing when the volatility is coming, knowing when it's declining, it helps you find support and resistance levels, know when trends are stopping. So yeah, if I could recommend any one tool for anything, it would easily be that.
You know what's crazy about the Bollinger Bands? Like when I think about the time in 2016 when I went through my chart reading trading courses, Bollinger Bands were one of the most basic indicators that I first learned how to read on a chart, and this statistical significance of it. And it's nothing crazy, right? It's just a median. It's just a 20 simple moving average with some standard deviation points around it. In some ways, I have found, especially as a statistician, even in my own profession, sometimes the most simplistic things are the most value-added things.
Right.
Don't need to get super crazy,
Yeah, people overthink it all the time. You think you need all these tools and like 20 indicators and all these trend lines, and the truth is find the one thing that you feel really good with and learn it inside and out, and that's where you're going to find the most success. And that's just happens to be what I found with the Bollinger Bands. And just to plug it, Bollinger on Bollinger Bands. It's not an exciting title for a book, but it's John Bollinger's book on the Bollinger Bands.
Yeah.
And it just taught me so much about how to use them. You can find it for very cheap used on used bookstores. So keep an eye out for it. I highly, highly recommend it. And it taught me a ton about the market too, beyond just Bollinger Bands. He goes into a lot of stuff. So highly recommend that.
Excellent. Maybe we can end the live stream with this if you're willing. I didn't want to open up the live Q&A to TA Q&A as I often do, what I call technical analysis Q&A. But Tony, are you willing to share your view on Quant, QNT? Do you have any charts prepared or something you can quick look at and just give your opinion? Obviously, your technical analysis is valued in the live stream, so people just want to just know your view.
QNT is the ticker?
QNT USD. You can look at it on Coinbase, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any particular view on it off the top of my head, but I'm absolutely happy to look at it. So yeah, it looks like Coinbase is probably our best chart. Let's see.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe look at a lower time frame.
Yeah.
Oh, do whatever you want though. Don't let me get in the way. I want to see how you chart actually. This is actually quite interesting.
So we have the squeezing action here of the Bollinger Bands. We're still kind of hanging around at the middle SMA. To me, this looks like pretty extended wave 2 correction, and this could be the beginning of a 1-2-1-2 type setup where we're going to get a third wave up here, because this looks like a clear 5 waves up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we get like a sort of mini extended bear market here, and then this looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and as long as this doesn't carry to a new low right here, I would anticipate a very strong uptrend. And let's see, I can go to, I think probably a 2 month will help us. And yeah, I mean, this to me, this is telling me you've bottomed.
Oh yeah, look at
Um,
that. That's
yeah.
is that what do you have on there? The Fisher, is that the Fisher?
Yeah, this is my Fisher transform
Okay.
tool, and I really just love this thing on the high time frames.
I'm gonna
So
start taking a look at
basically,
this. Yeah.
for your Japanese candlesticks here, you're getting a retest of this. This is your bottom right here, and
Yep.
um, as long as this doesn't, we don't lose this support and carry to a new low, I would definitely consider this bottom is in, and we got a setup like, you know, um, something like this.
Nice.
And I'm sure anybody looking at that right now is pretty happy with where these prices could go.
Go to X real quick. I think you gained 10 more followers on there.
Good. All right, excellent. Good. Welcome aboard. Yeah, no, that's great, man. And these are some of these wave count things are always a little bit harder to look at, but with Elliott Wave, it's always if it doesn't carry to a no low, you do have your bottom, and some sort of impulse wave is more than likely building. So yeah, I would like to see it a little bit stronger at this point with some of the other altcoins in the market. But my opinion, this 2 month and 7 days is going to close above $113. It will close above this Bollinger Band basis, and as you can see here, you get this tightening effect. So volatility should begin to expand. These should expand, and we should see an upward movement.
One of the things, real quick, before we sign out here, one of the things I really appreciate about your technical analysis, you're zooming out on a higher time frame. I think for many different reasons, including content. I do not consider myself a content creator. I consider myself an educator. But content creators out there for grabbing onto people's emotions, focusing on smaller time frames, lower time frames, impatient investors, if you want to call them investors, they focus too much on the lower time frames. And I really like that now I opened up the box to you. Hey, someone wants to know your view on quant. You're looking at a monthly and 2 month, right? You're looking at a higher time frame to assess what's going on in this asset. I just, as a technician, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thanks for calling that out. And it's something I'd really love to reiterate. If you learn one thing from me, is try to get your head out of the low time frame charts. Unless you're a day trader, scalper type person, you never want to look at anything under, like, say, the daily 4 hour. Those things have value to try to find out exactly when to take a position.
Right.
But if that's what you're watching for, the daily price movements, all you're going to do is stress yourself out. This is what you want to look at. This is where the candlestick signals are extremely valuable. Right here alone in this one square, I can tell so much because it's a high time frame chart. This is a bullish engulfing right here. Took out completely engulfed this candle. Now, meanwhile, this is a pretty large candle, but it did not fully engulf this. This tells me, hey, we're probably not going to see anything below the low of this candle, and we did not this whole entire time. So you could just tell so much from the higher time frames, and it just doesn't exist on the lower time frames. It's not going to give you as much, value in terms of the dominant signal. So yeah, that's the biggest takeaway if you get anything from me from this episode.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reiterating that message. Really appreciate hearing it from your viewpoint. One more time before we sign out here, where can they find your content out? How can they subscribe to your newsletter and get access to your indicators?
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's coinchartist.substack.com, and you can also find me on X, Tony the Bull BTC. I also write content for News BTC and Bitcoinist. You can follow me. I have coinchartist.com. I'm sorry, coinchartist.io. Where you can get some free education as well. I need to do some more work on that, but right now the big thing for me is the newsletter. That's my biggest passion. Is sort of just bringing people as much insight into what's going to happen in the market. And I called out indecision. Could it? This just tells us it's a pause in the trend. The decision is going to be made this month. I said, and we got a large white candle here, and that tells us, hey, we got a decision, and the decision is up. If we retraced here, I would deal with that then. So even though I'm Tony the Bull, you're never gonna get bullshit. You're going to get your bearish and bullish analysis. You're gonna get told when, hey, I actually just don't really know right now. I'm just kind of waiting and seeing, and whatever the outcome is this month or this week will help drive the rest of my analysis. Something may change, but ultimately, I try to make it clear as well. Like I'm still sticking to whatever particular plan that I've stuck to all along. So yeah, you'll get a lot of things from me, and then just by subscribing, you get access to all the indicators on TradingView. Yeah, so that's really what I'm all about. Thank you so much, everybody, for checking out my charts, checking out my newsletter, and messing with my indicators. I hope you give them all a chance.
Logic, education, and authenticity. Appreciate it, Tony. Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you so much for coming on the live stream. Appreciate the friendship and appreciate you coming on here to share wealth and knowledge, as always.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and thank all your followers for giving me the time here today.
All right, guys, we're gonna sign out. Until next time, everybody. Let's all spread it, awareness and education, and let's carry that shit forward. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
All right, we are signed out.